Someone, let's say someone's going for an interview, which is one of the questions that we got from our viewers. I'm going for an interview, and I mean, I'm an expert, I've got a degree in this particular thing, but then I just don't know. I'm nervous about how I sound on an interview.
Yes, sir.
I've got performance anxiety, I've got nerves. What would you advise them for them? How should people prepare for an interview?
Yeah. There's a 3S model that I give to people. The first one is, so the 3S model is, you want to think about the story you're going to tell. You want to think about the strategy you're going to take, and you want to think about the state that you're in. Now, this framework is not mine. I've stolen it from Tony Robbins, but I typically apply it when it comes to interviewing. Let's start here with state. If I'm going to a job interview, my interview is at 2, when I wake up in the morning, it's important that I get myself in a state that's going to be most conducive for that interview. What does that mean? The music I play. I'm not going to play somber, dim, 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 that's going to alter my mood. And this is because I know how much music moves me. So I'll put in music that's going to get me to dance, get me in a jovial mood, get me excited, even if I don't feel excited. But I know that music is going to get me excited, so I get myself in an excitable mood, right? So that's me fixing my state. On my way to the interview, I'm greeting people. Hey, short bafo, grand, mocha. Hey, how's it going? Like, I'm chatting to people to get myself in a state. By the time I get to the interview, I'm already opened up, I'm already interactive, I'm already open to the world and to people. Most people, they've got an interview, they sleep the whole day, and then they say nothing before the interview. Then they get inside the interview, and the first word they're saying is in the interview. You're setting yourself up for failure. That's like, you remember those old cars that you need to start the engine, keep it warm until it's able to. That's like you just getting unwarmed up, right? So your state needs to be adjusted, and you can do things to adjust your state. So being interactive, chatting with people, the music you play, and then a practical thing to manage nerves is to exhale deeply. So for a very long time. And the reason why that works, whenever you are relieved, your body naturally gives the sigh. And that's the body giving itself release from tension. And so if you want to give yourself that, you must give yourself the sigh naturally. So that's going to release some of the tension that your body's feeling from being clammed up because of nerves. So sigh externally and then move your body a lot more to get rid of some of that adrenaline. So that's what that interacting with people and engaging with people does. You alter your state so that you're in a state that's conducive to have the interview. Now, this is not going to eliminate the nerves, but it's going to manage them properly. So that's the state. The second one is then the strategy. What do I mean by strategy? You mustn't just say, I'm nervous for the interview, Thabani. Like, what does that mean? What are you nervous about? And when you start having that conversation with yourself, so for instance, for me, with interviews, it's always around accuracy of information and data, because I know that my memory is terrible. So if you ask me to cite a research paper and give you the numbers, I'm going to be like, yay, I don't know. I can, like the study we spoke about earlier, I didn't know the numbers. So I know with accuracy and data, I'm terrible at that. The second thing is I often just worry about is technical things. I'm not the most technical individual, and so I worry about what if they ask a technical question. And then the other thing I often worry about is, it's actually those two main things, but they'll also present themselves differently, right? It won't just, I'll know that I'm worried about they're going to require me to use my memory, and I'm going to struggle with that, and then they're going to ask me something technical. Now I know what I'm scared about in the interview. And then I say, what do I do when they ask me to recall a fact? Okay, this is my strategy. I'm first going to state my short-term memory is terrible, so I might get the numbers wrong here, right? So I've given the preamble, and then I'm going to continue to, and I actually did this when I was citing the stats earlier on. I said I'm going to get the numbers wrong here because I know my short-term memory is terrible, right? So when you know what you're scared of, you can come up with a plan. Now the plan does two things. One, it gives you what to do when you don't know what to do. But secondly, it gives you the impression that I've taken care of my blind spots. And the reality is they hardly happen. Like very minimal of them happen in the room. But if you've planned for it, then at least you know you've got an exit plan for when that thing happens. And in the room, when they ask a technical question, what your body's going to do is going to clamor up, you're going to become anxious, but because you know that these questions make me more nervous than any other question, you then recognize that this is actually going to get me in a different state. And what I'll do, if they're asking me one of those questions, I'll listen for the first time, and I'll pause, and I'll say, please ask that question again. Right? Because I know the first time I heard it, I got triggered and my body thought fight, flight, freeze. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's that question. So I was hardly listening. So if I pause and I say, please ask the question again, then I'm actually able to listen to what they have to say.
Yeah.
And then another strategy I propose people do is bring a notebook and write questions down. Because when you're in the moment, your mind has a particular, it's got fixed energy that it's got allocated for it to run its processes, memory being one of them. When you're in an anxiety-driven situation or an anxiety-inducing situation, your brain uses some of that energy to deal with the stimulus that's causing the anxiety. And memory is not a priority when you're in trouble. So because I feel threatened in this interview and I feel like if I don't get this right, I'm going to lose, it's like pain aversion. Like memory, my memory then goes on the wayside. And I know because I struggle with memory, I can't rely on my memory in that moment. I can't even rely on my short-term memory. They've asked a question. I don't even trust myself to remember the question they've just asked. So as I step into the interview, I've got a notebook. I'm like, I've got a notebook. I think better when I write things down. So if you see me writing things down, you must just know I'm noting your question and it's helping me think. And just having a notebook as they ask the question, I'm like, oh, okay, so you want to find out what I'll do when there's conflict. Okay, maybe two things. And I'll jot down. So this is my conflict resolution framework that I'll use. Then I'm like, okay, the first thing would be to sit down and talk to the person to understand what's going on. When I've understood what's going on, then I can move to step 2. Do you know what I mean? So that notebook for me is golden. It's helped me in a lot of interviews. That's one of my strategies. So we've just covered now the state that you're in, you can alter that, then the strategies that you can use. You know what you're scared of. I don't know what you're scared of. But if you're clear about what you're scared of, you can then come up with action plans against those. And the third one is story. The interview, we typically think, because of school, we need to memorize our answers to, tell me about yourself, how do you deal with conflict, but memory is not the point of it, because your memory is going to fail you anyway. But what I say is come up with a story. Know what your story is, and what the pillars of your story are. And I'm going to give an example of what a story is. When I step into an interview, my story is, I'm a servant, so I hardly do things where I'm not useful and effective. So wherever I am, I'll try and serve, I'll try and show up. I figure things out. So throw anything at me and give me some time and I'll figure it out. And I'm also down to get the flag on top of the hill. So if we need to pull all-nighters, if we need to work all weekend, if we need to not sleep, I'm down. So long as there's an incentive at the end. Those are the 3 things that I just need to remember. Any question they ask in the interview, when my mind goes blank, I'll revert to one of those 3 stories. So anything they'll say, I'll just say, look, as someone who's committed to serving individuals, this is what I'll do. And if you think about conflict, so how do you deal with conflict? Look, as someone who's committed to serving individuals, because that's the story that I have in my head that I've prepared. Someone's committed to serving individuals. The first thing I'll try and find out is what happened? And who initiated the conflict? Was it a misunderstanding? How can I serve all parties involved? So I understand what happened. And when I move from what happened, I then think about how can we resolve this without using institutional, like written warnings, dismissals, and things like that. And then I try and see, can we get, like in my mind, all I'm thinking is, how can I serve? How can I serve? How can I serve? How can I serve? Right? In answering that question as I talk the panel through that question. So with every question, if you've got a story and what you've prepared just leaves your mind, just revert back to your story. And with those 3, if you alter your state, you know what strategy you're going to use and you know what story you're going to tell, then interviewing becomes simple. Then maybe a last tip. All they ever ask about in an interview, all questions can be bucketed into, what do you do? Who do you do it with? And how do you do the thing that you do with those people? Every interview question is about those 3. And if you can be abundantly clear about, this is what I do, this is the value that I add, what do I do, who I do it with or who I do it for. This is who I do it. This is who I do it for. And how do I work with those people that I do this thing for when I'm doing it? If you're clear about those things, you've got all of the answers to any interview that you can ever go to.